Hi, this is Isabelle Litzler, Pleiade HC, the place to be to develop your skills and grow your potential. So I'm still getting a lot of questions on practical matters. So things such as work permits and opportunities in Switzerland at large. So keep sending me those questions. I have my on-demand services that are built just for that. I do it by email. I can do it face-to-face on Skype. We find a way to work together. So one of the questions I received this week was about resume gaps. I've done a video already. I will link it up here so you can watch it after this one, where it was the one thing to avoid. It's about resume gaps. But I know a lot of people have gaps on their resume, and one of the clients I had this week, her question was around, I have a more than a year and a half gap. I left my previous employer. I did a master's degree that I will soon finish. Do you think this gap will negatively impact my job search? So I want to talk about this today because I think, again, the resume gap, a lot of people can identify with this or have this problem. So in my view, to get started, there's two types of gaps. There's the over 6 months and less than 6 months. So obviously, if it's less than 6 months, it's quite easy. I think one of the quick fixes is to use years instead of months in the resume. So you don't have to put, from September 2016 to March 2017, whatever. You just use years in your experiences. That keeps it a little bit more blended. And I think you can always explain during an interview that maybe you took a language course or you did something. I think 6 months is okay. And people understand that when you change jobs, there's always a little bit of a in-between period. So it's quite acceptable. Now, if it's over 6 months, and that's more the topic of this video because again, we're talking more about serious gaps there. So more than 6 months, it's harder. You're putting yourself in a different category, meaning that you're more of a longer term unemployed, and it becomes harder to get back into the job market. So in general, employers prefer people who are always employed. That's just across the board in any industry. If you're always employed, you're going to be more attractive. Now, if you leave the workforce over 6 months, you get into this category where you're not as desirable. That doesn't mean you can't work anymore. You're never going to be employed anymore. I'm just saying in terms of traction, you get less traction. That's just a reality. So now I want to give you tips on what to do to get back into the attraction for the employer. Well, the first thing is to look at what the company needs. And I know that's something that people don't do in general. They look at what do I need and what do I want, but not what does an employer want. And sometimes you realize it's not necessarily the same thing. So yes, when we do make choices that we want to go for your travel, that we start families, that we want to just do something, a personal project, that's something we want, but it's not helping the employer, meaning what do they get from it? You get a lot of satisfaction from it, but they don't. So really it's looking at what does your typical employer in your industry want? So what does the market need? So most of the time you realize, you don't necessarily need a lot of education. So when you do additional education, it's maybe making you feel good about yourself. You feel that you have more skills to offer maybe, but you realize that employers sometimes don't need all these skills. They just want people who are technical enough to do the job, but they don't necessarily need a triple master's or a PhD. Especially in Switzerland, we're in a very practical country where it's more your technicity. You just know your stuff and you know it very well and you get hired for this. So more is not better in Switzerland, basically. It's just enough to do the job and you understand your industry and your specificities, but you don't need to add up master's degrees and PhDs. So that's something that's hard, especially from other countries where maybe the rush to the degree is a little bit more intense. So think about the employer and do the work, upside down. What does the employer want? Maybe they want someone who's available. That's the first thing. So if you look at what you have to offer right now, I know if I look at the workforce right now, most people are not available. They have families to take care of. They want to leave by 5. That's not helping the employer. They want to have more time off. They want to have more holidays. They want to be able to switch easier between sectors and companies. That type of flexibility is just not something most employers can offer right now in the market, in the current market. So you see already there's a a dysfunction there in terms of what people want and what companies want. So, the CV gap is going to be harder to bridge if you're not understanding fast enough what the company wants. So the quicker you can get that, what the company wants, and it's individual based on your field, the quicker you can get back aligned with that and put yourself back in the market. So that's number 2. Number 3, anticipate your changes. If you're going to have big changes, especially if it's over 6 months. So you want to keep up a network around you that will support you throughout your career. And most people right now are not prepared. So I think the younger generation now are understanding the power of networking, and they start building up their network sooner rather than later. But you have a whole generation there that's just not prepared. So they're on the, outside of the workforce, and they can't get back in because they left, and they realize that it's more work than they thought. So you have to do, I would say, double work at that stage to get back into the workforce, connect with people, go out to lunches, go out to coffees, and it's extra work. It is, especially if you're busy with your project right now, whether it's a family project or something else. It's going to be hard to find this time to get back in. So you're going to have to be extremely motivated to connect with individuals again, make the time for that. If your career is important to you, you're going to have to give it a certain amount of energy, and I think that's where we have also an issue there between what people can give as energy and what's required to actually be successful in the workforce. So you just have to be aware of these things. It's not an easy thing, and I cannot say this enough. It's not easy to transition. It's not easy when you have gaps to go beyond those gaps. There's not one pill that you can take that's going to solve the problem. It's going to be a series of actions that you will have to do to get closer to your objective. So it's going to take time, effort, energy. So be prepared for it. I hope this question helped you around CV gaps. If you have the same issue, send me a message, contact@PleiadHC, and we'll take it from there.